Dick Cavett. And say the secret word, and you win $100. No, you divide $100 between you. That's what it was. I'm sorry, that's someone else's line, not mine. How are you? Welcome to the show and to picturesque 58th Street in New York. This is some street we're on, isn't it? I have never mentioned it much before. The man who wrote Every Street's a Boulevard in Old New York saw this street and burned his piano, I'm told. Really something. Can you hear me in the balcony? How do the people who say no know what I ask? They have never figured this out. Besides Mr. Marx, Truman Capote's here tonight, and Jim Fowler. Jim Fowler, you know, always brings an animal. I'm not allowed to tell you what sort of animal he has brought tonight, but the people in the balcony will be glad to know that it likes to attack people close to the ground. So it's nice to... He had a boa constrictor here earlier, but it got loose somewhere, and so we don't... So to the lady who complained to the page that the fire hose was bothering her... Don't have a fire hose. Anyway, let's just the big news, of course, is that the Food and Drug Administration, this isn't very big news, has said that everything has to be named from the place it came from. That's in today's paper, and probably the least exciting news item of the day. Like Boston baked beans have to come from Boston, Idaho potatoes. This has worried sick the executives in the Valley of the Jolly Green Giant. This is actually an actual law. And the executives of Mars bars are panicking. It's a wonderful law. You know that terrible sense of panic you get when you're eating an Idaho potato and think it might have come from Montana. I'm so glad they passed it. What else? Have you noticed that the concern with truth in packaging has come along at the same time as the no bra fad? Is there a joke there? I'm just asking. I don't know. There may be a joke in that. I haven't struck it yet, but there may be. Say, my dumb cousin Norman, I haven't mentioned, he's in trouble with the law. He was coming east from Chicago on the bus, and I think it was in Detroit, they said, you change here for New York, and he started to undress. And, just a joke to see if you could tell a joke from real things. Say, Martha Mitchell and J. Edgar Hoover appeared at that dinner in Washington last night. Did you see about that? And Martha Mitchell said a profound thing. She said, when you've seen one director of the FBI, you've seen them all. Did you see that? She did, got a big laugh. What else? There's another thing in the paper, that tall men make more money. A professor at the University of Pittsburgh did a study, that's true. It said that they get higher starting salaries at companies. I resent this sort of news item. The fact that he studied the Knicks, the Lakers, and the Celtics. No, he really did. And when you think about it, it probably is true. I mean, have you ever had a man come up to you on the street and say, can I borrow $10? I'm a little tall? No. Oh. Are these the same people who were smiling and applauding earlier? There's a subject I do not know how to broach with you, but it's come up. Several people sent clippings in from the paper. This age, sex has been so abused, this age that we live in, as you know. And the latest thing is probably the capper of them all. Have you heard of this thing called the Sex Bowl that's going to take place in the East? Yeah, it is. I'm not making this up. It's going to be on closed-circuit television, luckily. And various, I'm trying to explain this tastefully, various couples would do what you would expect in a sex bowl, and they're supposed to be graded. Is this appalling? Are they going to grade it like college? I mean, originality, neatness, and grasp of subject, or what? I've got to know what's this. It's absurd. I don't want to go on with this. Listen, there's a man backstage who's making everyone laugh with a cigar and mustache, and why Truman Capote is dressed that way, I don't know. So we'll be right back. If there had not been a night at the opera, a day at the races, and duck soup and room service and coconuts and animal crackers and a few other films, the world would be a much worse place to live in. The word great is tossed around a lot, and the word giant, but my next guest is one of the greats and one of the giants. Will you welcome, please, the one, the only, Groucho Marx.
Just consuming your time that could be used for much better purposes. I have a few sex stories that I'd like to tell you as soon as he leaves the stage. How are you?
It's very
How
nice
did you
I'm
find
fine.
things in London?
They were fine. The fog lifted, and there they were. Isn't that an old joke? How did you find
Perhaps.
London?
I'm so accustomed to old jokes, I don't even pay any attention anymore.
Let's see. I couldn't help noticing your hat, which you've worn more than once here.
I wear them because there was a time where the hair was receding so swiftly, and I wore a toupee. And I saw myself on the show once wearing a toupee. It was ridiculous. Just a big, greasy-looking, smooth spot up there. There's no point to that. So I used this hat actually to play golf.
Yeah.
I could tell you a golf story if you'd like to hear it.
Well, I wouldn't mind that.
It's I'm not crazy about it, but
You don't have to. Who gave you the hat? I was just wondering whose taste
I
that is.
bought it at the Hillcrest Country Club.
You did?
Yeah, I think I paid about $2.50 for it. They had seen me play and decided that I'd need the appropriate costume for the way I played golf. This is true, and I've worn it ever since. But I tell you why. I always say to the man who runs the show, the man who obstructs it, I mean, that I always ask them to ask me why I wear this. Because otherwise it looks like you're coming out just to see how funny you can be.
I don't know why
I think that's ridiculous. You know, the average grown-up person shouldn't have to wear a hat with 3 balls on it.
I think... Oh, yeah, there are 3. I thought for a moment there were not.
I hadn't...
But one of them's
I didn't mean it for a dirty story.
No, I'm sure you didn't. No.
Because I don't tell dirty stories. I feel very sensitive about that subject.
You've said that before.
This is true, and I'd like to talk about it for a couple of minutes.
Well?
No, I'm serious. There's a show in town, I understand, where they practically do the sex act on the stage. I don't want to identify the name of the show. I'm sure you all know about it.
There's more than one.
Well, this one was written, I think, by the guy who was the leading dramatic reviewer in London.
Designed by him.
Designed.
That's what they say in the program, designed by.
He didn't write it, huh?
Well, he wrote some of it.
Well, I hadn't seen it. I was offered the seat to go to see it, but I heard it was filthy and I wouldn't go, that's all.
Yeah.
Because I think that's too easy, that kind of laughter. Anybody can say something dirty and get a laugh. But say something clean and get a laugh. That requires a comedian.
That's right, it does.
I wasn't looking at you at the minute.
No,
Although
certainly
I had
looked
you,
like you were.
No, I had you in mind.
Oh, well, I thought I could tell
But
that.
this is true, and I think it's about time they quit it. The movies are all dirty. Most of the stage plays on Broadway are dirty. And I think it's all wrong because it doesn't require talent to be dirty. Be clean and be funny, that's all. But I do think it's had its day. I think they're going to go back to clean movies and clean plays on the stage.
You think we're starting into another Victorian age, maybe?
Well, that wouldn't be so terrible.
No, it wouldn't. I have a feeling that people were... certainly sex was more desirable then than it is now because it's like...
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well,
There's something about sex that, you know, but you have to get up so early in the morning.
You do?
It's hard to catch a train that way.
I don't know.
Well, there used to be a joke about that.
Oh, is that the punchline of a famous joke?
Yes, where the husband says to the wife, "You and your morning stuff. That's why you missed the train last week." I have to explain it more, but it's so dirty, I'm ashamed to say it.
After what you've just said, you can't tell it.
No, but it is really true. I resent those shows and those movies, and I don't go see them. I saw one. It was called something about a housewife, with a very good actress in it, and a fellow named Benjamin.
Mm-hmm. Dick Benjamin.
Dick Benjamin.
Carries.
He was very good. He was a kind of a lousy husband, and in order for her to get even, she got another fellow. And then they spent 80 minutes of the movie in the sack, these two. Well, I'm not interested in that. I don't care what they're doing in the sack. If I'm not doing it, why should I sit in the theater?
I think you speak for the majority of it.
I think it's true. I think most people resent the filth that goes on nowadays. Well, it's in the common language today. You know, in the old days, if there was a party and there were four women and four men there, at the end of the meal, the men would probably go into another room and tell dirty stories, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the women would probably tell dirty stories in another room, too. But they didn't tell them all together, that's all. There was a kind of a restriction about those things. It still exists in London, because I was over there a couple of years ago, and I was at the ambassador's home many nights. The ambassador then, I forget his name. It's not the fellow that is now the American.
The one before that?
Yes.
Ambassador Bruce?
That's it. A charming guy and a charming. And after dinner, we had a very fancy dinner. Kennedy's widow was there, and a lot of fancy people. And after dinner, when we got through eating, Churchill's daughter was there, Mary, lovely girl. I must tell you about her.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Will it take long? Because we have to take a message, and then we'll come right back.
No, I'd be glad not to talk.
Just my luck. Wait a minute. I'll bring you right back to that.
Well, anyhow, when I was in the embassy at their home, and what was his name? Bruce.
Bruce.
And after dinner, the men would go in one part of the house, the women would go in the other part, and they'd smoke cigarettes and cigars and tell dirty stories, but they didn't tell them together.
Yeah.
That's all. And it seems so much nicer if people are going to tell dirty stories to confine themselves to that and leave the men alone. Let the men have their own fun in their own shoddy way.
All right. Fair enough.
Now, I was having dinner with Mary Churchill.
Yeah.
And I said, don't they serve cigars at the embassy here? This was Bruce's family. She said, of course. I said, why don't you ask them? So I got up and I said, will you bring in the cigars, please? So the butler came in with a big box of cigars, and I took a cigar, and she says, take one for me. I said, I didn't know you smoke cigars. She says, oh, yes, never tell you about that. My father and I, we always, whenever I visited him at, what was it, Churchill Downs or... No, that's a racetrack.
Yeah.
Well, it was the name something like that.
His house.
His house.
10 Downing Street?
Yes. Because one night there, before I go ahead with this story, one night there, they were running a movie in the projection room. And that was the day that Hess was captured in Scotland. And Churchill was running a day at the circus, one of our old pictures. And some stooge came to the door and said, we have just captured Hess. What'll we do? And they sent this message into Winston, and he says, let him wait till the goddamn picture's over. It's true. But anyway.
That's how we won World War II.
And you know that she said, whenever I go to visit Daddy, she called him, I would always take a cigar with me, and he would have a cigar. And then we would bet £1 who could hold the ash on the cigar the longer. Now, this was a guy that was running the whole empire.
Yeah.
The only thing he was interested in, not in India or Pakistan or Japan or any, he just wanted to win £1. I think it was $3 at that time from Mary.
Betting on an ash.
Betting on, yeah. That's all right at midnight. I don't expect that at 6 o'clock in the evening. I'm surprised at you, college man.
It is nearly midnight.
Yeah.
Say, are you ever sorry? Are you ever sorry you didn't go through school?
Yes, I am.
Are
Very
you?
much. I'll tell you why. Because I was never much interested in acting. I always wanted to be a writer.
I know.
And I didn't finish public school. And I had no confidence in writing. Eventually, I wrote 5 books. But if I'd have gone to college, I'd have been a writer much faster in my life, and probably a much better one, because I wasn't sure of grammar or English or anything else. So I didn't finish public school. But I have got a book in the Congressional Library in Washington.
I know. But I don't know that you would have been any... I mean, you're better educated than a lot of college people. You know that.
I'm not sure of that.
I think
no.
you've... Because you've read all your life, and you've made a
Yes,
big point
I
of
have read a
educating
lot.
yourself.
I was one of the first contributors to the New Yorker magazine under my name, which is Julius Henry Marx. Yeah. And I have the pieces home, which I had written for the New Yorker magazine. I was much prouder of that than I was in any play I'd ever been in, or in vaudeville, or in movies, or any place else. I always wanted to be a writer.
Yeah. I hate to think of you being solely a writer, though, because then Captain Spaulding would have been played by Lloyd Nolan or something. It wouldn't be the same. Nothing against Lloyd Nolan.
No, but he has a nurse there, and it's not bad either, according to Dave Frost.
I'm not going to get into this.
No, I don't think you
you
are.
wrote a. Now listen, Groucho. You wrote a. Didn't you write a? I'm going to keep talking here. Didn't you write a screenplay one time? I heard that you'd written a screenplay, and it may be wrong. Have you ever written a screenplay?
No.
Oh. Did you ever not write a screenplay?
Frequently, a number of those that I actually did.
Yeah. Did they ever take anything out of any of the films that you fought for to keep
I
in, or
took some of
suggest
the girls
anything
out,
that you?
who were in the chorus.
No, I mean,
The
did
ones
they?
that Chico hadn't grabbed by that time.
Chico got most of the ladies, did he?
Chico got most of the girls. Yes, he always did.
Yeah.
When he played the piano, and he had a kind of a flirtatious look on his face, and the dames they'd fall down, that's all. They were so crazy about him. And it took the rest of us 4 or 5 weeks what Chico would do in 2 nights. He had an enormous amount of charm for women.
Yeah, they say he was just fatal to women.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He was fatal to a number of them, too. Yeah. But I always envied him because it always took me a long time to get a girl. I usually had to get married first and pay alimony. No, this is true.
Yeah. You did that number of times.
3 times.
Yeah.
Now I am half divorced.
That's right. Backstage, last time you were here, you had some ailment and you were taking a pill for it. And just before the show, I said, last time you wanted me to remind you to bring your pill, and you said, I did, my wife. Do you remember that? Now, did she get offended at things like that, Eden?
No, she's accustomed to it.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I guess I'm a lousy husband. I've been married 3 times, and it's cost me a veritable fortune. And I brought the woman I just divorced, I brought here with me. And we're living together in the hotel.
Really?
Yeah.
That's scandalous.
I don't think so. I'm very fond of her.
Yeah.
And she loves me, but we don't hit it off if we're married.
That
And
is
now that we're
interesting.
not married, we have a wonderful time together.
Yeah.
I've been all through Europe with her and South
Yeah.
America and all. And we have wonderful memories of Paris and London and Sweden and Austria and Germany and all those places.
Yeah.
But if you take up a fresh Tootsie, let's say,
Right, yes.
you have no conversation.
Yeah.
Now, Eden and I, that's her name, Eden. Her name is really Edna, but she changed it to Eden because she thought that was fancier. And the guy she was going with was named Edna.
Well, let us take a message from our local stations, and maybe you'll sing something for us. We'll be back. If They can bring the house lights up a bit.
I killed myself there.
I noticed that. You stepped on the edge of the
Luckily,
stage.
my insurance agent's in the front row.
If you'd fallen on him, it'd be ironic.
Oh, he's fell on me a number of times. All the way back in 1929.
What's his name?
Salwin Shufro. You wouldn't believe there's a man.
Is it really?
You know, when I call him up long distance from the coast, and he's in New York, and I say, who do you want to talk to? She says, the operator. And I say, I want to talk to Salwin Shufro. She says, you're kidding, aren't you? Don't worry about that name. It's a made-up name, isn't it? I said, no, it isn't. I've been with him since 1929. And he still insists on using this name. It's the most ridiculous name I ever heard.
Selwyn
He's a
Shufro.
grown-up man. Weighs 170 pounds.
And he's still named Selwyn Shufro.
He's still named Selwyn.
What were you going to sing for us?
I was
for
going to sing. I
dedication?
want to sing a song that was written by Irving Berlin during the First World War.
He's supposed to be watching the show tonight.
Yes, he is. He told me that he was going to watch it tonight.
Yeah.
I don't know the song well, but I'll fake my way through it.
All right.
Just for Berlin.
It's yours.
Down below, sat the devil talking to his son, who wanted to go up above. Up above, he cried, it's getting too warm for me down here, and so I'm going up on earth where I can have a lot of fun. The devil simply shook his head and answered to his son, you stay down here where you belong. The folks who live above you, they don't know right from wrong. To please their kings, they've all gone off to war. And not a one of them knows what they're fighting for. Way up above, they say that I'm a devil and I'm bad. But the kings up there are bigger devils than you're bad. They're breaking the hearts of mothers. They're making butchers out of brothers. You'll find more hell up there than there is down here below. I want to talk.
How old is he?
First World War.
Yes?
40 years.
Thank you.
One night, Irving Berlin, who I consider the greatest songwriter America's had, if he had only written Alexander's Ragtime Band. But he also wrote many other songs like God Bless America and Call Me Madam. Well, I can't remember how many songs he's written. He's written most of the great songs in this country, and he also wrote words and music. So he's quite a guy. And one night, he had come to California, and they gave him a big dinner, ASCAP. That's the musicians' organization. And I had arranged with Harry Ruby, a close friend of mine, that I would sing this song that I just sang. And when I got through singing it, Irving Berlin called me over to the table, and he said, Groucho, if you ever have the urge to sing that song again, will you come to me and tell me that you want to sing it? And I'll give you $100 for every time you don't sing this song. It's a true story. I just want to say this in closing about this song. Sure, it sounds maybe corny today, but I want to tell you, it has a lot of truth in it today. When the musicians play, they're breaking the hearts of mothers, making butchers out of brothers. You'll find more hell up there than there is down here below. Now just think of Vietnam, and just think of all the places where the American soldiers have been. A couple of 100,000 of them have been killed and wounded. Maybe he was a pretty good prophet, Irving Berlin, when he wrote this song 40 years ago. That's all. I just wanted to tell you.
We'll take a station break and we'll be right back.
If it's the kind of a place I think it is.
People at home must be
asked
wondering
me.
what... A lady yelled out, "What's your telephone number?"
That's not a
to the
lady.
people at home. Well,
I resent that word, lady.
Lady.
It's becoming very popular now. They say, gee, she's a nice lady.
Yeah.
I prefer woman.
yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
it's much
Ladies are-
nicer for somebody to say, she's a fine woman, she's a great woman or something. Woman means something. What is a lady?
Ladies a value judgment, I suppose you might say.
You're
But
much better educated than I am. Do you notice the frequency with which the women are now referred to as ladies? They say, she's a great lady.
she's a real
I
great
resent
lady.
that. Yes, I resent that. I think woman means something. Woman
Yeah.
is like mother.
Yeah.
Don't
That's
you
right.
agree
There's
with
also the women's lib women don't like the word ladies, so people are a little self-conscious about which to use. It's like,
that? Well, I don't like the women's lib.
you know? You may like-
I think as long as they're willing to take alimony, they have no right to ask for women's lib.
a lot of them don't want to.
And beside that, they should go to war. Not as soldiers necessarily, but there are many jobs in the Army and Navy and other places where they could use women.
Oh, women have gone to war. And
Not a great
nurses,
deal.
yeah.
In Lysistrata, maybe. But that was for
They're supposed
specific
to be better
reasons.
educated
Yes.
than you are. Hey, Groucho, nobody ever explains why the films were named what they were. Why coconuts? Why duck soup? Why animal crackers? Who
Well,
thought those up?
Coconuts was named because the fellow who produced it was Sam Harris.
Ah,
And he used to go to Florida every winter. And then he would write us unfunny postcards about we were knocking our brains out working on Broadway. Well, he was down in Florida drinking mint juleps.
yeah.
So the first one was called Coconuts. And it was a lot about
Florida.
Florida, Miami.
Why duck soup then? Animal crackers.
Duck soup, there really was no logical reason for that at all. But, you know, it was a comedy. It was about a war. It wasn't as serious as the one we're still having.
I know it's a strange feeling to see it now because
It's a strange
comedy
feeling I
is
got
about,
yesterday when looking at the front page of the New York Times and saw Johnson and Nixon walking towards the library. And they looked so proud and happy. What great things they have done. Johnson lengthened the war 6 years. Nixon has started 3 wars since he's in there.
You still, at one point you had stopped reading the papers, you said. It was just, there was too much
Well,
bad news.
I don't read the news at night when I go to bed because it's just a remake of what's been going on all day. Now, I don't want to hear it over again.
Yeah.
You know, and they show you a battlefield, and there are boys laying there dead and injured. And I don't want to see that when I go to bed at night. I have enough problems going to bed without that.
I suppose.
You want me to tell a story about... what was I going to tell you about?
There was something you told me during the break. I forgot now which thing it was. I asked you once if they censored much of the stuff out of the films. You did talk about that one time.
No, I think we had the cleanest movies that have ever been made.
Oh, a story.
All our
There is a
movies,
story. I know
Coconuts,
it.
Animal Crackers, all those pictures were clean. We never had any dirty dialogue. Occasionally I'd make a play for Mrs. Rittenhouse,
Yeah.
but she never understood that.
Why did they feel they had to put a romantic interest? I don't mean you and Margaret Dumont,
Thorberg.
but I mean
Thorberg.
in Night at the Opera they had a love story, which gets
Yes,
a
they
lot of
did.
snickering when you
I'll
see
tell
it.
you what Mike Nichols said. We ran the picture, Night at the Opera, one night at Gregory Peck's house, and Mike Nichols was one of the guests there. And when the picture was over, he came over to me and says, "That's the 17th time I've seen this picture." And I said, "That's kind of silly, isn't it, to watch any picture 17 times?" No, he said it was worth it. I'll tell you why. It had the greatest love story you fellas have ever had in any of the movies. This was Alan Jones and Kitty Carlisle. You can imagine that love story.
Very nice people, I'm sure. It does get snickers, though, when you see the...
Yes, it does. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Thalberg had a theory that if the audience is rooting for you, more people will come to the theater. And he was right. Because before that, all our pictures were kind of aimless or kind of foolish pictures. They were funny. But this one had a story. And the audience was interested in the progress of Alan Jones and Kitty Carlisle.
They didn't snicker when it first came out.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Mike Nichols has been snickering now for 17 years. But after seeing Catch-22, he shouldn't complain too much either, you know.
Did you like that?
Had one wonderful scene in it.
Yeah.
That was the one with Alan Arkin.
Well, it was,
Wasn't it?
It was in a lot of scenes. Oh, yeah, there was...
Yes,
movies
Orson
with Alan
Welles
Arkin.
was the general.
Yeah, right.
And Alan Arkin comes in, and they're going to put a medal on him. Unfortunately, he's naked.
Right.
And there's no place for Orson Welles to put the medal. But it was a wonderful scene.
Speaking of that, is this story true about your first meeting with Thalberg when he kept you waiting?
Yes, we had just come from the stage where we had done Animal Crackers and I'll Say She Is and Coconuts, and we were pretty big shots in the theater. We got a lot of salary. And when we got there, the first meeting we had with Thalberg, we were going to meet him at about 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So we got there at 10 o'clock. We were always very prompt.
Is that at his office?
It was a very palatial office with a huge fireplace and huge logs there for in the winter. It gets cold in California in the winter. And we sat there from 10 o'clock until lunchtime. And we never saw Thalberg. Because he was shooting 4 pictures at that time, one with Mark Connolly and with one with F. Scott Fitzgerald. And, you know, we thought we're guys from Broadway, the hell with them. So we sat there till 1 o'clock, and then we went out and had some lunch. Then we came back, and it was 2 o'clock, and we still hadn't seen Thalberg. And it was 3 o'clock. Then we sent one of the help to the restaurant, very, very fancy restaurant, and we bought 4 potatoes. Mickeys, they're called.
Raw potatoes?
Yeah, raw potatoes. And we built a big fire in Thalberg's fireplace. We took off all our clothes, and we sat there naked, the 4 of us. And when Thalberg came back, we were sitting there naked, and we wouldn't let him in the office. He said, no, we said, look, you kept us waiting 5 hours. He said, we don't need you. We can go back to Broadway.
What was the purpose of the potatoes?
The purpose was that everybody else was going for lunch, and we thought it'd be nice if we just have lunch in Thalberg's office. Yeah. And he never got angry with us after, because everybody was afraid of Thalberg, except us. Yeah. We didn't. Once we had cooked the potatoes, he kind of joined in with us. Because he never had any fun, Thalberg. He played bridge with Harpo at night, but that was about his only fun he had. He built a home on the beach and had it soundproof so we couldn't hear the waves. He's a very eccentric man. This is true.
Gee, that's good.
But he was certainly the greatest producer that Hollywood had. Yeah. And they have a building there now. It's called the Thalberg Building. I may have told you this, that at that time, Greta Garbo was the biggest star in the movies. Yeah. Untouchable and beautiful. And we used to take the elevator. It was 4 flights of stairs. And we had gotten in the elevator on the first floor. And on the second floor, the door opens, and a woman steps in. And she's very well dressed. And she's got a big hat on, like a lot of women affecting now, some kind of strange, like Merry Widow hats or something. And I was kind of bored in the elevator, so I took the rear end of her hat. And I went like this. And she turns around, and it's Garbo. Well, I was a little embarrassed. And I said, I'm terribly sorry. I thought you were a fellow I knew from Kansas City. That was really a chutzpah, because she was the big star in the whole movie industry.
We'll be right back. We're back. There was so much yelling more and more when you were up singing. And no one ever gets tired of hearing "Show Me a Rose."
Well, I don't object.
I wouldn't. Maybe if we pulled the. Maybe if we pulled the stage back, because the people in the balcony can't always see you. It feels like California. First of all, I didn't get an answer from you whether you do show me a rose.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Do you mind a moving stage?
I don't care.
You will?
You want me to do it here?
Well, wherever you like.
No, I'll go down there.
Yeah, use the stage. It's more fun.
I may slip again.
That's the edge.
Here? Ever since songwriters started writing songs, they have written songs about a rose. Red roses, blue roses, old roses, new roses, roses from the south and east and west. But here's the rose song that I love the best. Who needs you? Show me a rose, and I'll show you a girl who cares. Show me a rose, or leave me alone. Show me a rose, and I'll show you a stag at bay. Show me a rose, or leave me alone. She taught me how to do the tango down where the palm trees swayed. I called a rose a Mia, and she called a spade a spade. Show me a rose and I'll show you a storm at sea. Show me a rose or leave me alone. One night in Bixby, Mississippi, we watched the clouds roll by. I said, my dear, how are you? And she whispered, so am I. Show me a rose, and I'll show you a girl named Sam. Show me a rose, or leave me alone. Show me a rose, a fragrant rose, Make believe that you don't know me until you show me a rose.
Yeah? You have to take a break first. We got a message, and we'll be right back. Talk with the other guest. That's great. Here we are. Would you like to meet a sloth?
A slob?
A sloth.
I've met a number of them since I've been in the wild. How big a slob is he?
It's a sloth, actually. It's a small, medium.
Spell it.
S-L-O-T-H, or maybe it's a sloth.
God, you could spell it, couldn't you?
Well, I'm not sure.
Is this from Nebraska?
No, it's not one of the Nebraska sloths. Jim Fowler is bringing this, the sloth, or sloth. And I thought...
Is this the fellow that wrote the book on English usage? Fowler?
No, that's another Fowler.
Is he a sloth, too? I never know what you're talking about.
I have that problem with you, but we make a good team. Will you welcome Jim Fowler and his sloth, please?
You've been on here before.
Oh, yeah.
I saw you here with a bear or a monkey or all kinds of animals, huh?
Sure.
Is this your regular profession?
He works real well with them, too, Fearless.
Not as good as you do.
Do you have a sloth concealed in your clothing, or?
We have a sloth that is going to be coming on a little bit later. He's a little slow getting here.
Oh, he's sloth-like.
Did you have an eagle on the show once?
I had an eagle, yeah, here.
That was
a few
marvelous.
weeks ago, yeah.
I mean, he would fly from one end of the stage to the other.
Right.
You do watch?
Yeah, I do. Well, when they have animals, I watch it. I'm not crazy about people.
No, but animals you
I
like.
love animals.
What is the sloth stuck back there, or is he worried, or is there any problem you're not telling
We
me?
used to
Has
have
he
a
fainted?
duck in our show, in our
Your
quiz
duck,
show.
yeah.
Maybe I could get him for you. You know, the only thing happened, when they dropped the show, we ate them.
Oh, that's
Never
sad.
had a duck since then.
I always liked that duck.
You know, I get so much mail
Yeah?
about the duck. They all want to know what the name of the duck is. And we never had a name for the duck. So I said, we called him mallard,
Mallard.
which is a type of a duck.
Yeah.
And that seems to satisfy the people. They get an enormous amount of mail asking questions like that, foolish questions about
Name of the duck.
the name of the duck.
People always want an animal to have a name. This is some reason. This sloth is called Gozo, and
Go-go?
he's a two.
Did you say
Gozo. Gozo.
Gozo.
He's a two-toed sloth, and he's.
Well, how does that differ from a one-toed sloth?
Well, there is a three-toed sloth too. I don't know
three-toed?
why, but they seem to.
Well, are
a little
they
different. There's no one-toed.
more unfriendly if they're three-toed?
Well, you know, for some reason, the three-toed is more friendly than the two-toed. The two-toed has a sort of a nasty habit. That's the one we have here tonight.
Oh, we have the nasty one.
But,
What nasty habit did he have the night he was here?
well, I've had a few that have had nasty habits.
You must be
The eagle, for example, is.
The eagle?
Yeah, they sometimes
Isn't that
leave
the American bird?
It is.
Since the dissidents, anyhow.
The dissidents.
Yes. They had them in Washington at the public library there.
The dissidents.
Well, the dissidents were there screaming at these two gents walking into the library.
That same eagle I
I
had
think one
here.
of them had been the president at one time.
You're right about that.
That same eagle I had here, I had in the Waldorf one night and flew it from the balcony down to the stage, and he left his mark on the Waldorf.
They're
They
very
still point
expensive,
to
aren't
it,
they?
yeah.
The feed, I
Yeah.
mean, at the Waldorf.
Yeah, they are. They have.
Stevenson used to live there, you know, when he was running for the presidency.
Your mind makes some strange leaps, I must say.
What's wrong about that? He's got a son now who's running for governor or senator in Chicago.
Ah, then it all makes sense.
Yes,
We'll meet our sloth after a message from our local station. We're about to see our sloth. It is sloth, isn't it?
Sloth, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really one of the strangest, I think, of all the animals that I've ever seen.
sloth.
Well, I think both
Like coleslaw.
pronunciations are acceptable.
Is he likely to leap?
No, he does everything very carefully and very slowly.
I don't see him yet.
There's not.
Oh, the audience can
he'll
see
come
him.
out in just a second here. Come on, Gozo. I give him
Look at
an
him.
instruction, then it takes a little while before he.
Look at that.
They can't see him.
You know, this is
They can
something I discovered quite a while ago. That of all his foods that this sloth likes, he likes roses, usually at about.
I could sing Show Me a Rose again. Just to keep him happy.
Can you see him? You can't see him from
I
where
can't
he's...
see either of
He'll
them.
climb up and get.
I'm not much interested in seeing him.
Oh, isn't he great? Oh, what a great animal. Would I dare pet him?
Yeah, you can pet him, but I think I better put him on this broomstick.
Yeah.
He seems to.
Is he happy or
He wants
upside
to
down?
have something that he can hold on to.
I know I am.
Come on. Come on.
What?
It's the lousiest looking dog I've ever seen.
Oh, he's terrific.
They live their life completely upside down. Very seldom ever turn around.
I know a couple of guys
See if
like
he
that. Used to be called a massage parlor.
What? He's actually eating a rose. Is it?
see that.
You know,
that's
I
good
knew
for
a
him.
fellow who once said to me, I know a massage parlor where you can get a massage. It's true.
And then,
Hard for.
what does that have to do with the sloth?
Let's see if I can turn him around so the camera can see him a little better.
Now, is he friendly to humans, and will he attack them or bite them or any?
This kind is fairly friendly. There's another three-toed sloth that we were talking about is even more friendly, but they're so specialized. They're very, very strange, and their survival is the key to their survival is the fact they move so slow that very few things can see them. And in the rainforest of South America, they actually grow a moss on their stomach, and actually that camouflage.
And they hang upside down most of their lives.
All the time, so you can imagine.
Do they have girlfriends like other animals?
They have girlfriends, but there's no danger of there being a population explosion. They get around. Pretty.
Can there be any kind of an explosion?
Never. No kind of explosion with a sloth.
They're so slow.
It's a pretty dull life they lead, hanging on a broom.
Even they're so specialized for this kind of living that the hair on their stomach is parted, goes to either side, where most animals, it's either on the top of the head like Groucho or on the back.
Well, I was operated and I have hair here.
Sloth
but, the other nice thing about it, so I don't recommend...
It's hard to conceal an operation.
Yeah, I guess that's true, especially down
unless you have a lot of hair.
Does a sloth ever have a runny nose? He's always upside down. I guess he probably doesn't have to worry about that.
This one likes bananas, and he sort of gets them all over him. But
that's the name of Woody's picture.
One of the nice things about having a sloth as a pet, although I don't recommend exotic pets too often, but these are great because you can put them in a tree in your living room, and they just hang around all day.
Didn't Truman Capote live in a tree at one time? No, I'm serious.
Well, we'll let him answer that question.
Either that, or he wrote a book about living in a tree. It may have been Brooklyn.
I'm sure he'll be glad to clear that up for us.
Do you feel the hair on him, though? Because the...
I'd be delighted.
Yes. Do you want to feel the sloth?
Rainproof, yeah.
You want me to feel him?
Yeah.
There's a dame in the third row I prefer. If I have my choice.
All right.
You have an enormous amount of patience, don't you?
Well, with a sloth, your patience is not tested too often, but...
No, but I've seen it with other animals.
Yes, with other animals, definitely. It's funny, I had a sloth giving a talk once, and he came like this at me, grazed my face, and after the show, a lady came up and said, "Mr. Fowler, I could just tell that your animal loves you." I said, "Madam, that was a fast jab." It really was. That's about how a sloth attacks you, but... With elephants and a few things like that, you've really got to watch out and know a little bit about it.
Yeah. Come back sometime and tell us a lot about elephants, because I know you just you lived with some elephants recently.
Yeah.
You've just been living with elephants.
I just got divorced.
We'll be right back after this message from our local station. We're back. Here's one of America's best writers and most interesting people to talk to, and I just learned that he lived in a tree at one point. I don't know if that's true. Now, will you welcome, please, Mr. Truman Capote.
You want to try the hat? You want to try the hat?
No, I can't. I don't need a hat with 3 balls. I'm just an average person.
That's explaining it clearly.
You know, the last...
I don't think I'd want to remain. You last time what?
The last time I was on your program was our charming evening with that delicious gentleman, Governor Maddox. Remember?
That's right.
When he got up and walked off. Well,
is that the last time you were here?
Yep, that was the last time. But all of these people in Georgia, various readers of mine, one night after that, kept sending me transcripts of a program that Governor Maddox talked on in Atlanta called Atlanta Today. I meant to send it to you. He had quite a lot to say about us. All of it libelous.
That's interesting. I'd love to see that if you have a copy of it.
I do.
Yeah. I think he's coming on again.
Who's that?
I think he is.
Governor
Is this a
Maddox.
private conversation you two are having?
Oh, no.
Who am I supposed to talk to? That animal he's got in the box?
That sloth.
I would like to engage in this conversation.
I know how
in
he
some
can.
capacity.
All right, let me give you a capacity.
All
You
right,
said
so about
earlier
2
that
gallons.
you said earlier that you'd be a better writer if you had gone to college.
That's
and
true,
I
I
wondered
think
if
so.
you agreed with that?
I didn't finish high school.
I didn't finish public school.
So
I went to PS 86 at 96th Street in Lexington Avenue. It's now been turned down, or burned down, or torn down.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we used to go. Go on, you talk to me.
What do you think writing can be taught effectively in colleges?
no. I mean, I don't think that, I think journalism can be taught.
Yeah.
But I don't think creative writing can be taught because the only thing that happens is that in a creative writing class, at least the student has a captive audience, which is the other students, you know, to submit his work to or the professor, and he gives him some encouragement in his work. But I think it's impossible to instill any creative process, whether it's writing or music or painting, in a person who isn't naturally creative. We can learn a certain technique, but that's all. I don't think you can teach somebody to act. Do you?
Teach what?
I don't think you
Teach
can
someone
teach
to act.
someone to act.
I thought he said he wanted to know if I knew a rat. He talks very softly, this man.
I know you're sitting a long ways apart. I'll filter the things
I wish
over
you would.
over to
Push
you.
the chair over, isn't it? Or I'll sit on his lap and talk to him. Maybe he could train me to do something. Like that eagle you have.
Have you ever wanted to hang upside down on a broom? I guess not.
No, but
Silly
he
question.
told me the toughest thing to train, actually, is a rat. Because it's so much like a human being. He wasn't being comic. He told me this while you two were whispering to each other.
I said that rats are very smart, so sometimes they're harder to train. The easiest animals to train are the dumber animals, the more stupid animals.
And a rat's cagey and smart.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, does it have the highest intelligence of the
No,
rodents?
well, of the rodents, yes, I would say so.
You had that
Especially-
fellow on your show once, a fellow named McCormick. He's a big, tall fellow, very funny. He's a writer.
Right, Pat McCormick.
And he was working for Don Rickles.
Yeah.
And it was the first show, I think, and McCormick said to the audience, Mr. Rickles will be a little late tonight because he's out walking his rat.
That's right. That's his joke.
That's a very funny
He
joke.
made that. It is funny.
And it resembled Rickles so much, you know.
Yeah. The joke or the?
No, the joke.
Yeah. Do you have any animals?
Yes. I've,
You don't have a rat you're not using, huh?
no, I have 2 cats and a dog.
Yeah. But you
Do
don't.
they mate?
Not with each other, no.
You're pretty shifty, aren't you?
Elusive, not shifty.
I don't know how to handle all this.
I want to ask you one question.
Did I
This
live
may
in a
be a
tree?
joke. I don't know. Did you once write a book about living in a tree?
Yes.
Well, see, I was right.
But you said he once lived in a tree.
Well, I was a little confused at the time. But he did write a book about living in a tree.
I wrote a book and a play called The Grass Harp. And it
Yeah,
was
my
about
brother used to play
some
one.
people who lived in a tree house.
Yeah.
There you are.
all.
So I'm
I
sorry.
think I'll leave now.
I wouldn't do that.
Properly crushed, yeah?
You said your brother used to play one. You know, I was going to ask something earlier. Which brother were you the closest to?
I think Gummo. We roomed together.
Some people, you know, don't know there is a Gummo. They know.
He doesn't know.
No, I mean, you know.
I remember when Gummo had a son. And Gummo at one time was in the Army in the First World War. And Gummo had a kid, 7 years old. And in school one day, the teacher asked all the children what their father did for a living. And when it came to the boy's name was Bobby. And the teacher said, "What does your father do?" Now, he didn't want to say he was in the Army. So he said, yeah, oh yes, he said, he's a general in the Army. And Gummo was annoyed at this. Why did you say that I was a general in the Army? I wasn't a general, I was a private. And the boy said, well, who knows you? And that's
He
all
really,
there is to it.
Was Gummo upset by that?
Yes, Gummo was disturbed by that and finally went back into show business, where he had no talent at all.
But Zeppo was the.
Zeppo was also in the act.
Yeah. Did you know there were 5 Marx brothers?
There were 6.
I just
One
knew there
died
were
at the
5.
age of 4.
Is that right?
Yeah. And it's a strange thing because my mother only spoke German and my father only spoke French. How they got together to have 6 kids, I never found out. But it's true. There were 6 boys.
Yeah. Do you have brothers and sisters?
No.
No.
Yeah, 2 cats and a dog.
That's it.
Would you consider throwing in a rat?
Do you ever
Give
resent
me
it when
one.
people say, when they find out you're an only child, they always say, ah, I knew it. Does that happen to you? That happens to me. They say, ah, I could have guessed. I never have known what people mean by that exactly.
It was difficult for
No,
us
they
to do
mean
because
that
there were
you're-
5 brothers.
Yeah, it would have been
We
absurd
couldn't
to
say that we were the only children.
No. Although you could say we were only children.
This is true.
Yeah.
I didn't know you went to Yale. I thought it was Rutgers.
You like the name Rutgers, don't
I
you?
do, yes.
Yeah.
Harry Boone used to write about Rutgers a great deal.
Do you feel that Truman is dominating the conversation?
I would like to say one thing. If you'll forgive me, I would like to say one thing.
Okay.
And that was said by General MacArthur when Truman, not you, the other Truman, fired MacArthur. And MacArthur had said, never fight a land war in Asia. And right after that, the president fired him. Truman.
That's right, MacArthur did say
is
that.
true.
A lot of
Yes,
people...
he did. And if everybody else had remembered that, we wouldn't have a couple of 100,000 boys that are dead. Now, you may proceed, Mr. Capote.
We have certainly set him up nicely. First he follows a sloth, and now...
Yes, but at least he's a professional writer,
yeah.
which is more than I can say for the rest of this group.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you've written 5 books, haven't you?
Yes, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Dick was a professional writer?
Well, I was a comedy writer. That's not the same as writing.
Oh, really?
that?
I think it's the hardest form of writing there is.
But it comes
You
in quick...
bet it is.
It comes in quick bursts. It isn't anything that you have to sit out and do over a long period of time, like writing a novel or plotting out a book. It's
Yes, but I mean, comic novel writing is, at least a writer like Evelyn Waugh, you know, who was a great comic writer.
Who's that?
Evelyn Waugh, English novelist.
Yes. And Ring Lardner wasn't bad either.
But I don't consider him a comic. I don't consider Ring Lardner a comic writer. I
Well,
mean,
he's a dramatic writer, actually.
yes, he is.
When he wrote Haircut and all those books that he wrote, they were a Golden Wedding and all those. Eventually was another one.
Yeah.
And Lardner, well, of course, I was always crazy about Lardner.
I found that people who liked those writers of that period always say that Lardner was... They often say Lardner was the best. For
Well,
some
I
reason.
think he was
I don't know
close
why.
to it during that era. And he had some sons who came out to be pretty good writers, too. As Ring Lardner, I think, who got the Academy Award, didn't he?
For MASH.
And then there was John Lardner, who used to be a sports writer on
The New Yorker.
New Yorker magazine. So there was a whole family of writers, but he couldn't write at home. He'd go to the Pennsylvania Hotel, he'd take a couple of quarts of whiskey, and he'd close the windows and pull down the shades and get drunk, and then he'd start writing.
Yeah. A lot of writers get drunk to write, don't they?
Oh, yes. Benchley was drunk most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can write when they're drinking.
When they're drinking?
Not really. I think that it's impossible for a person to really write if they're while they're drinking. What can happen is that a writer can write and get, say, a day's work done. At the end of the day, he can take 2 or 3 drinks, and something in it loosens him up, and so that he can go through what he's done and suddenly get a kind of inspiration in his rewriting. But it's impossible to drink and write at the same time, or
Sinclair
drug and
Lewis
write, which is
was
an
a big
amazing
drunk.
thing. What?
St. Clair Lewis was a big drunk.
Yes, but he wasn't drink. He couldn't be writing and drinking at the same time. It's
perhaps not.
impossible.
Yeah.
Perhaps not. Unfortunately, I'm not doing either.
What I think is so curious is the whole idea of taking drugs and writing, because it doesn't work. If there's any one thing in the world that requires total concentration, it's writing.
And yet there are few writers who claim they wrote with drugs, although you can usually tell it, I always feel.
Tell me one writer.
They wrote when they were at stud, did you say?
Say-
Did you say that?
No, I said, well, under the influence of drugs.
Oh, drugs.
Have written
I
under
thought
the
you said
influence of-
when they were at stud they couldn't write well. Well, it's kind of difficult.
Have you ever noticed that everything that you hear wrong has a common theme running through it? We have...
Unfortunately, it's getting less common all the time.
Right. We have a message. We'll be right back. Don't you have a book about to appear now? For a couple of years, we've been waiting for answered prayers. And have you turned it over to the publisher yet?
No. I refer to it now as my posthumous novel. Because either I'm going to kill it or it's going to kill me. It's just sort of like an endless Chinese dinner. It grows and grows. I can't seem to get to the bottom of it.
It isn't that you don't know how to touch type that's holding it up or anything. It's
I write longhand. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
I can only write by dictating.
Really?
I cannot write with a typewriter or a lead pencil.
You dictate to a secretary?
I dictate to a secretary, yes.
Yeah.
Henry James dictated
I must tell you about Henry James. Some woman in South Carolina or someplace, she visited Hollywood and she wanted to meet me that I was a great fan of Henry James. And she invited me to come down to some town in the South and if I would talk about Henry James. Well, I don't know any more about Henry James than I did. And I wrote her a letter and said, you had me confused. I'm very familiar with the works of Jesse James and Harry James, who was married to Betsy Grable or something. But I don't know anything about Henry James, and I didn't. And I never had to go to that town. But they had sent me the money first to come down there. So I made a little profit there. More than I made with this guy in the front row here. He's my financial advisor. He dropped 10 points on me today.
What man is that?
Well, I
Groucho's
don't like to identify
lawyers
him because his reputation is none too good as it is. And he's sitting there and in the front row yet besides, so everybody will be sure to know if I mention him who he actually is. When the market crashed in '29, I engaged him as my financial advisor, and we've been together since then. And that's about 40 years.
Started with a crash and ever since.
Started with the crash, yes.
Is it true that once during the stock market crash, or at some point you went down and appeared at the stock exchange
Yes,
itself?
I did, and I sang When Irish Eyes Are Smiling in the stock exchange. For no particular reason, except I was so angry at Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I was using him at that time. But over the years, we've been fairly successful together. He is very conservative, very shrewd, and I suggest almost everybody in the audience who hasn't got any money to get a hold of this man. He will wipe you out almost instantly.
Have you ever thought how you'd feel if all your money were taken away from you? Could you live?
It happened to me today.
What?
It happened to me today.
How?
Well, for 5 years, I've been having a controversy with the Internal Revenue Service, and today they settled it. And they just took all my money away. After 5 years of controversy, yesterday it was announced today what the settlement was going to be, so that was the end of it.
It was not in your favor.
Now I'm just going to have to walk the streets with my prices strapped to my back from now on.
Have you ever thought about living in a tree?
I think that is terrible news to get. Did they listen to your arguments? And
For 5 years, yes.
Yeah.
But I have to pay 5 years of fines for having talked to them for so
You know,
long.
you can cure that by getting married. You can split the taxes that way.
split the taxes?
Who do
if
you
you
suggest that I get
If you're a
married
single
to?
man, you pay a much bigger income tax than if you're a married man.
I didn't realize that.
Well, it's true.
So there are advantages to being
Yes,
married.
that's about the only one that I can think of. When you're home alone at night in a single bed, it doesn't help any.
No.
But if you have a companion with you who is will listen to reason, I think there is money to be made in income tax.
I think we can all profit from that lesson. I'm not sure exactly how, but it sounded fine.
Truman, have you ever thought of getting married and splitting the tax?
Will you find somebody for me to marry, and I'll consider it, okay?
I would marry you in a minute if you were not write another hit book like you did about Kansas.
Yeah. Did you read On Cold Blood?
Yes, of course I did.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Will you consider this an engagement?
Yes, positively. Positively. You're a little old for me, though. That's all.
I can't give you what you're entitled to.
The best years of your life.
We'll be back probably. The time has flown away, and we have not much left. In fact, about 30 seconds, and that's time to thank Truman Capote and Groucho Marx and Jim Fowler and the Sloth. And all of you come back again. You hear?
You hear?
I don't know. Can you get him again?
Yeah.
He may have other animals.
Thank you. We'll
Have
see
you ever brought an elephant on the show?
Please, I have enough problems. We'll see you tomorrow night.
White elephant.